So it's my great privilege today to introduce Dana. She's the director of the brand communications at Beyond Type 1, sorry. She has supported the partnership between Beyond Type 1 and Connected Emotion over the past 3 seasons, which we're grateful for. Part of our work with Beyond Type 1, Dana supports the editorial team is covering industry news, including the latest technology for people with diabetes. Dana was also has been Type 1 since 2002 at the age of 8. I don't know how that's possible because she looks like she's probably about 20 right now. And she's joining us today from her home in the Bay Area in California. So it is my honor to welcome Dana.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. It is, this is my first ever webinar presentation over Zoom. So I'm so excited to be with you today. As much as I do wish we were in person hanging out, I'm really I just think it's awesome what the SIM team, the Connected Emotion team, has pulled together here as far as virtual options. And I'm super excited to be part of that. So yeah, like my intro said, I am not really a tech expert, but I hope that that makes this presentation even better because my goal is to sort of share what we at the Beyond Type 1 team are excited about right now in diabetes and tech, and just share some of what that conversation has been. To make this presentation, I talked to the editorial team. We cover news out of diabetes tech all the time on our team. And I got to sort of ask everybody that I work with and say, what are you following along with? What are you most excited about? And in the next 30 minutes, I'm just hoping to kind of touch on a lot of different things that we are following and watching, some of which are already on the market and some are coming soon and some are even further out, but that's my goal for this presentation. So thank you. And I hope it is fun. I am hoping to be able to take questions live, but I'd love for you to put them in the chat. And then I'm gonna be checking the chat, and I will try to take questions while we're on the topic. And then if you have questions at the end that we don't get to, we can do that too. So thank you. And thank you for tuning in. Get started. Cool. So yeah, first things first, I wanted to do a couple really quick polls just to get a sense of who all is tuning in. Again, I really wish I could see your faces and be in the same room, but it will help me understand as we talk about tech, what tech are you using? What is your level of familiarity? So we have some quick polls. I'm pressing the polling button. I'm hitting launch. Okay, so you should now be able to vote. Amazing. This is very cool. So I see results rolling in. You have, oh no, you have plenty of time. So 26 of 30, that seems pretty good. I don't know if you can all see the results too, but I can see the results, which is awesome. Looks like about 20% of the group using a Freestyle Libre, 75% using a Dexcom, 1 Medtronic user, and 1 person not using a CGM. That's a lot more CGM use than the total diabetes population out there. Certainly all diabetes, but definitely type 1 too. So that tells me this group is pretty connected. That's awesome. Sweet. Okay. Oh, you can see the results if I say share results. There you go. That's what I was just reading off of. I'll do that sooner for the next one. Cool. Let's go ahead. Poll 2. Are you using an insulin pump right now? Pretty basic questions from me. Sweet. And poll, share results. 90% of us are using insulin pumps right now. I am also, again, way more plugged in than the broader population, but cool to know. I hope that this presentation is news to you today, and I apologize if it's not, but if you have things to add, drop them in the chat and let us know. Sweet. We have one more poll question, which is just about loops of any kind. So DIY loop or a commercially available loop. Cool. All right. So that makes sense. I'm sharing the results. Again, we're skewing super tech focused from this group. 40% of us are using a loop of any kind, DIY or commercially available. I did not ask whether it was DIY, whether your loop is DIY or commercially available, but we'll get into that a little bit. 60-ish% are not, but know what it is, and only one not sure, but we're going to talk about it. So if anything, like, I'm a little concerned that most of you might already know what I'm going to talk about, but I hope not. I hope we talk about some cool and upcoming tech things that touch on that world as well. Great. Those are all my polls, so we can keep moving. Great. So 5 things to watch in diabetes and tech, as promised. This was our short list from the team at Beyond Type 1. We're going to touch quickly on what is coming up in continuous glucose monitoring, talk about the closed loop systems that either are on market or coming to market soon, or DIY, new ways to administer glucagon that I think are really cool, connected pens and better data, and then smart insulins and new delivery methods. So this is like mostly things that are happening this year or next year. And then the last one about smart insulins is just a really cool and more out there idea that is a little bit further down the road. But with that said, I'm just going to jump in. Next generation continuous glucose monitoring is something we're watching really closely from the Beyond Type 1 team. Largely, like, the two kind of hot topics for us there are what is happening from Abbott and what's happening from Dexcom. So this is all new as of the ATTD conference that was in February. So the latest updates that we saw there was some really cool announcements around the Dexcom G7. This photo is from the Connected in Motion blog, which is from the presentation at ATTD. The G7, we are being told, is going to be 30% smaller than it is already, like the size of a quarter, fully disposable, which is really cool. And other features, a 1-hour warm-up time instead of 2 hours, 14-day wear extended from the 10-day of the G6. And then also promises being made about less waste. So we don't know exactly what that means or is going to look like, but certainly something we talk about and hear about all the time. And I certainly personally also think about is how much waste we generate with the Dexcom G6 applicator, that like big hunk of plastic. Dexcom has been pretty open about talking about trying to cut back on that and make the G7 applicator system have less waste than the current G6 system. Release date for Dexcom G7 sometime in 2021 is sort of the last we've heard. I should sort of caveat that a lot of the things we're going to talk about or just touch on briefly in this presentation, some of the like pivotal trials and clinical trials and research that's being done to get to the point where things become commercially available are unfortunately being delayed right now because of COVID-19. So I don't know the exacts on that, but I do know like that conversation is happening about whether we're going to be seeing launch dates get pushed out months because things are just suddenly moving slower and like in-person trials are not happening at the same speed. So that's kind of a bummer, but I'm sharing with you the dates from before that, so not adjusting for that. On the Abbott side, Freestyle Libre 2 is sort of the next thing coming from them, and it's actually already available in parts of Europe. They had been saying maybe late 2020 in Canada and the USA, and we're hoping for that. The big change with the Libre 2 is that it gives you alerts for high and low, which right now the Libre 14-day system does not. It gives you an alert and tells you to like swipe your Libre. The big deal here is that that is opening it up for use in future closed loop systems. So, which we're going to talk about next, but the Omnipod Horizon, which is Omnipod's like future closed loop system. They also have a partnership with Tandem. So the hope is that with some of these like commercially available closed loop systems of the future, the Libre 2 will be an option for CGM, where right now you're looking at like Dexcom with Tandem, but maybe someday very soon, once this is approved, you'll be able to pick your CGM and then pair it with the insulin delivery that you want. So that's kind of the future we're moving towards, which is a nice segue into talking about closing the loop. So 40% of you are already using a loop of some kind, whether it is DIY or commercially available. That's a lot. So in a lot of ways, I think I'm probably talking to people who know, but bear with me because I think this is where so much new technology is focused. And I think we're kind of in the midst of a transition to hybrid closed loop systems and eventually more fully closed loop systems being hopefully more widely available. Obviously, access is a piece of the puzzle that I don't get into in this presentation, but anytime I'm talking about technology and diabetes, I think it's important to acknowledge that like that's a left out piece in this conversation. We're just talking about what's available, but becoming available to many more people, you know, needs to be a priority for all of these things. But with that said, closing the loop, talking about closed loop systems. So basically, for people who don't know, a closed loop system is a system where your CGM is taking continuous blood glucose readings, is communicating with a pump that is running an algorithm with that CGM data to adjust your insulin delivery based on your CGM readings without you making those decisions. There are some commercially available now. There are more commercially available coming. And this all really started with the DIY movement, which I don't get into, but I know there was another presentation on that today. I'm certainly not an expert in this field. There's a lot of people who can speak better to it than I, but I think it's an important place to give credit where credit is due, where the community of DIY users really like brought this technology forward by like through the We Are Not Waiting movement. They kind of led the way with a non-FDA or like government approved system, hacking together originally older Medtronic pumps and a connector called a Riley link, which you can see in the top right photo, a Riley link, which allowed for conversation like technologically between an app on a phone and allows for an app on a phone to connect to a pump, which is either an older Medtronic pump or now also the Omnipod pump. The Omnipod pumps pre-Dash are what work on the DIY system right now. So some people are looping using that, which is not FDA approved, but Tidepool, which is a nonprofit in the United States, is working to, in the future, submit an FDA approved version of Loop. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And I include a link at the end of this presentation for more reading if you want to check that out. Going kind of quickly through these, basically every major pump manufacturer is working on a closed loop system right now if they don't already have one commercially available. So quickly, Medtronic was the first hybrid closed loop system to market with a 670G. They are now working on releasing the 780G, which originally they were saying mid 2020 we should see that. So again, asterisks next to all of my dates, but That will be different from the 670G in that it'll be able to give correction boluses without the user giving boluses. And then also they've been talking about promising fewer alarms and less input from the user, which I know certainly on our team, we've heard that that is a concern of many people on the 670G and could be a big improvement. Control IQ from Tandem. So in Canada now, I know basal IQ is available, but Control IQ not yet. Here in the States, we do have Control IQ commercially available, which uses the Dexcom G6. This chart in the middle of the slide is just more details about exactly how the algorithm on Control IQ works. All of the Loop systems use something similar to this. But that just goes into like how it's increasing your basal rates or decreasing your basal rates or stopping your insulin, and then delivering correction boluses. So the Control IQ from Tandem does deliver correction boluses if you are predicted to be above 180. These are in US numbers, so I apologize for that. I actually use the Control IQ system, so if anybody has questions about that personally, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to speak to that one on like a not professional side, but on the personal side. From Omnipod, they are developing the Omnipod Horizon system, which the like cool thing to watch from Omnipod Horizon is that the algorithm for the loop is actually going to be stored in the pod itself. So it's likely to be the first system that you can control and like look at entirely from your smartphone. It might be Android first. We don't know so much about iPhone, but because the algorithm is in the pod, it will also continue to make adjustments to basal rates when you are away from your phone. So that'll be pretty cool because it won't have that extra piece. I can see that there is a notification in Q&A, but I'm clicking on it and not seeing. Oh, I see it. Oh, I'm now just seeing all of your questions. I apologize. I'm happy to talk to some of them now. How different I found Control IQ from basal IQ. And dealing with more rebound highs as a result of extended boluses being canceled. I totally can relate to that. I think I had been dealing with rebound highs from basal IQ because even though it was turning off my my basal insulin when I was going low, I couldn't not treat the low with a snack. And so that's a behavior change that I was really struggling with and ended up both turning off my insulin and treating the low and then ending up higher. I definitely have found that the Control IQ system helps me just like more time in range has meant that I'm less likely to have a low where I'm crashing fast, which means it like gives the like suspending your insulin more time to work sooner. I still have like good days and bad days, which I think anyone can relate to. But on the good days, I find that both the like turning up the insulin and turning down the insulin, because the curve of the graph is less sharp, it seems to work better because, you know, insulin is slow and it needs you to be trending slowly in order for these micro adjustments to work. But it has been a big improvement for me because it seems to be keeping me more in range. Oh, good question on Freestyle Libre connecting with any pumps. Yes, I wanted to talk about that a little bit with the Libre 2. That's been part of the news of what's coming with Libre 2 is that Omnipod Horizon, they have a partnership and they've announced that Omnipod Horizon will work with both the Dexcom and Libre 2. And then Libre 2 also announced a partnership with Tandem in 2019. They didn't really talk about details, but the thought of that, like the thought behind the partnership between Freestyle Libre and Tandem is that likely the goal is for it to work with the Control IQ system. Let's see. Ooh, the new sport tandem recently announced. That is also a good question, and I'm going to be totally honest, one that I know less about. I know the idea is that the tubing problems are fixed. I'm going to be honest, I would have to go do more research on the sport pump tandem announced, but it's a good question. I'm sorry I can't speak more to that right now. Paul. Okay. Great. I think the Q&A is helpful.
Just one other question that was
mentioned.
The Libre 2, do you know if it's going to have a new adhesive, a different adhesive?
Good question. I don't know. Apologies. Why do people pick the Libre over the Dexcom? Well, I can't necessarily speak to the situation specific to Canada, but I can say in the United States that cost is a huge factor for why people pick Libre over Dexcom. And especially once Libre 2 comes out, I think it's going to be really interesting because it is a lot less expensive if you're paying a significant amount out of pocket to do Libre instead of Dexcom. And I also do think that there are people who like the swipe to get a reading, but you're not constantly looking at the graph of what your blood sugars have been doing. But I do think that the number one reason is around cost. It's also available through pharmacy benefit here rather than through durable medical equipment coverage under your insurance. So insurance is all a little bit different, and it depends on what your sort of local jurisdiction covers. But yeah, I think bottom line access is a reason why people pick Libre over Dexcom. Great. And then I had a couple more notes on loop systems. There are others. That's basically the note, is that a little bit further out, these are all sort of like what we can expect in the short to medium term. Longer term, Beta Bionics is still working on a system called the iLet. They don't have a commercially available pump now, but there is a long-term goal of a dual hormone pump, which would include like both insulin and glucagon is the sort of simple way of describing that, to try to regulate blood sugars using both. That's further down the road. And then Bigfoot Biomedical is also working on a closed loop system. So just know there's more than what I have talked about, but hopefully a good sense of what's out there. Cool, keep going. Okay, new ways to administer glucagon. Maybe not the traditional way we talk about tech, but I certainly, like in the Beyond Type 1 team, have been talking about the way that new glucagon options are making a big impact on diabetes management. Both of these are already happening and have happened recently, so I think it's interesting to touch on. Baqsimi is nasal spray, so that's a big step forward for how glucagon is actually administered, especially like in settings where other people might not be comfortable administering emergency low blood sugar treatment to someone if it's like a big needle. So talking like kids in schools, or even if you were going on a hike with a bunch of people who don't know about diabetes, it's a lot easier to show someone a nasal spray and say like, this is what you would need to give me, than the current glucagon rescue kits. I don't know when the last time you opened that up and reviewed the instructions are, but there is a very big needle as well as a whole mixing process before you can use it. So I think in terms of ease of use, this is game changing. Quick facts about it. It will work if someone is unconscious. That was one question people had, because you don't have to be conscious for the nasal spray to work. It'll still work. You can nasal spray insulin. Will that ever become? Oh, that's interesting. I don't know how nasal spray would work with a method of insulin delivery. Oh, nasal spray insulin. Gotcha. Sorry, I got confused because I shifted to nasal spray glucagon. Yeah, I'm totally sorry. One moment. So there are definitely some, I have never used Afrezza nasal insulin. I'm just going back to this question really quickly. I think it's a good question about whether it will ever become a very commonly used method of insulin delivery. I think it's been around and people who use it, a lot of them really love it. And I think that is great if it's the right option for some people, but we haven't seen it take off. And I'm not sure whether it's because of availability or some other reason, but I think it's interesting to kind of watch what will happen there. I'm going to jump back to talking about Baqsimi and other glucagon methods though. So on the nasal glucagon side, like I said, you can be unconscious, you can self-administer it or someone else can administer it. So there really is that lower barrier to use with Baqsimi. And then Gvoke is made by a pharmaceutical company called Xeris here in the US. This is their first product in the diabetes space, and they recently came to market with a pre-filled syringe of shelf-stable glucagon. So the big change here is that the liquid that was the mix of the powder and liquid in glucagon has not before been shelf-stable, which is why there was this step of mixing before someone could give you the injection. Their big improvement is that it's shelf stable. We just talked about that eventually there's this goal of dual hormone pumps being available. That would obviously require shelf stable glucagon. So this is a big step forward for what the future of glucagon delivery might look like. Especially like some people out there have been experimenting with things like microdosing glucagon. I think we're kind of changing how we think, or it might lead to changing how we think about glucagon use in general. Like it's been described to me as in the past, using glucagon has been this break the glass moment. Like you're in an emergency, you are breaking the glass and pulling the fire alarm. I think shelf stable glucagon, nasal glucagon in the future is lowering the barrier to entry of use, ease of use, and opening up what might be an option for a smaller dose, like with sick day management, or I've heard about like parents giving it to kids when they are low and not able to eat enough sugar, or they're sick, or they have a stomach flu. Same with adults, to be honest. So I think this is just a hint at like what we might see or expect in the future with the way that glucagon is changing and how we think about glucagon changing too. I'm looking. Megan asked a question about cost and how long they last, which I think is probably about glucagon. The nasal spray, I believe it's still, you can get them every year, but I think that, and I have to double check, but I think they last for 2 years after you get them. And I'm not sure on the pre-filled syringe side. The Gvoke comes in a foil pouch. Any suggestions on how to carry it daily? Good question. If anyone else has ideas, I don't know how big the pouch is that you're talking about. I will put in a word for, I actually recently picked up a Baqsimi prescription, and that yellow tube that you can see on the screen is really, really small, and like would fit in, for example, like the little zip pocket of running shorts even. So that's pretty cool, because I've never even considered carrying a glucagon rescue kit with me before when I'm running by myself, because it just never felt like a reasonable thing to put in a pocket. But cool that we're moving in that direction. Cool. And then I have 2 more, but they're quick. I know we're at time, so I understand if anybody has to go. I wanted to touch on like, what are we talking about in tech for people who are not using pumps and CGMs? I don't think pumps and CGMs are the only way to do diabetes management. And I also think like you shouldn't be left out of the benefits of some of this technology just because you're not using a pump in CGM. I don't think they're always right for everybody. So one thing that's worth mentioning is the movement on connected pens. I think this is really about data. Like, it's about capturing data easily and like putting that information somewhere where it's useful. So connected pens are tracking how much insulin you're taking without you having to do that work. The InPen from Companion Medical is one option that is available now. I know Novo Nordisk and Lilly both have mentioned that they're developing products. I think Novo might actually have one on the market. There's also a product called Clipsulin, which is like a little clip that you put on the top, or a cap that you put on the top of the pen. So you don't actually need a new pen, and it works with whatever you're already taking. And I think that the important piece of this is that not just is it capturing the data, but then there are places where we can access that data and it can be useful to us. This here is a screenshot from Tidepool. So I mentioned Tidepool earlier in the presentation, but they are building a place where any of your devices, as many as possible. So their goal is to get like every device company, every data, anyone who's collecting any data from any device, to allow them and anybody else to free that data from that device and put it on a dashboard where you can look at it and look at it with your healthcare provider, and have it become actionable. So this is their like software product that you're looking at right here. But the idea is that it works with every pump. It works with every CGM. It works with your meter. It works with your smart pen. So no matter what tool you choose, you're able to see all of that data on one dashboard. And to me, I think that in itself is a really important tech like solution, because it isn't black and white. It isn't like use this product in a way where it eliminates choice. I think that is like how we're evolving as a community with choice in mind. So I think that is really cool. This is Tidepool. It is free. Check out tidepool.org. You download the software and then it like plug in your pump or plug in your meter. You use health or another way of getting at your CGM data, but it will walk you through all of that. So yeah, just go to tidepool.org and you can get set up. They are a nonprofit organization here in the States. They're a partner of Beyond Type 1, doing really cool work. So check it out. And then the last one, this is a little bit more of an out there suggestion, but when I was pulling together this presentation, I felt like it was super focused on kind of like tech that you're either seeing right now or you might see really soon. And I wanted to include something that I personally and our team is excited about and talking about on more of a longer term, like down the road, like dream goal kind of thing we might see, just because I think it sort of expands your mind in terms of there's not like this black and white world between where we are now and the day that we have a cure. There is also like a lot of really cool work that is being done in the medium term that might make diabetes management in 10 years different than it is now, the same way it's different now than it was 10 years ago. And for me, this is one of them. This is a smart insulin patch. It is conceptual only, so asterisks on this. This doesn't exist. It is not yet being studied in humans. But this came out of a paper this February, so just a couple months ago, from UCLA, UNC, and MIT, 3 big research organizations or research universities here in the US. And the idea is that it's a daily patch, like a small patch that you would put on your skin that would, like you would put a new one on daily, and it has, through the patch into your skin is insulin inside some sort of casing that is then released based on the amount of glucose in your blood. So I think this, like I said, is very conceptual, But I think it's taking the direction that we are going and saying, like, what could that look like if we're able to close the loop in a way that's even more tuned into where your body is, but using the same kind of thought process that we're using with closed loop systems now, making it smaller, taking away some of the clunky pieces of it, and envisioning a future where, you know, it's not a cure and that your beta cells still don't work, but it is a solution that could lead to quality of life that is drastically improved from what we're working with now. So that is my last of 5. I included some links that I can make these slides available, or Connected Motion will make these slides available. If anybody wants more reading, or to hear more about some of the specifics that obviously I couldn't touch on in a quick 30-minute rundown, go check it out. And then also, if anybody has any other questions, I have a little more time now. I am happy to answer. Let's see. It looks like not at the moment. So with that said, I will wrap up. I would like to thank Connected in Motion for giving me the opportunity to talk tech and share a little bit of what we are excited about at Beyond Type 1 with all of you. I am looking forward to, I'm helping organize, this is the Canada virtual Slipstream. I'm helping organize the US virtual Slipstream in a couple weeks. So just shout out to the whole team that's made this virtual weekend possible. Thank you all very much. It's been wonderful to be here with you. And I know there is a concert happening. I think there's a food break first, food, drink, Saturday night, enjoy, but at 6:30 Eastern, so in like 50 minutes. So with that, we'll wrap up my time. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Dana. And again, like you said, so there's a break right now, then at 6:30 we'll start up again. And if you have any questions, are you sticking around for a couple minutes, Dana? So anybody can ask you some questions?
Yeah,
I'm
happy to hang around.
There's one in the chat there for you already. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I can hang out for a little bit and do more questions. I apologize if I don't have great answers for you, but I will do my best. Do I know of any newer, faster insulins coming out? Not really. So we have seen some slightly faster insulins come out in the last year or two. Fiasp from Novo Nordisk is one of them. And I don't know if there are any Fiasp users here. If you are, like, pipe up in the chat, but I have basically heard that it's like a little bit faster than Humalog, but not faster enough that it solves any of the issues of the lag time. So I've heard that it enters your bloodstream sooner than like Humalog or Novolog, but that it actually, like, when it peaks is around the same amount of time after you take it, maybe minutes faster, like 10, 15. But that in general, like, it's not bad, but it's not game-changingly faster. I haven't used it, so I can't say. Looks like Melissa has, so we'd love to hear more. But I think that is part of where Afrezza is interesting. I think it's a little different. It's because it's the inhaled insulin, it's not going to be part of a closed loop system, but it is faster. So it's quite a bit faster than any injected insulin right now. So as far as I understand, that's kind of like the main thing that is Afrezza has going for it over our injected insulins, which are, I mean, in my mind, like, way too slow. Like, that is kind of one of our primary hurdles that we have to overcome with how good our, like, hybrid closed loop or closed loop systems can be, still depend on fast acting insulin taking an hour to work. More Afrezza questions. How do you know the amount you take is accurate as it's inhaled? Yeah, I will not claim to be able to really speak to how Afrezza works. I've never used it. And I've never like really had a lot of time with someone who has, other than people kind of quickly telling me about it, and obviously reading about it. So I would have to do more research there to be able to really speak about it for you. But it looks like we have some FIASP users in the chat if you want to go chat about it over there. Closed loop system. Mr. T, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I think we're seeing lots of closed loop systems that we're going to see come to market in the next year or 2 years that will use a variety of CGMs and a variety of insulin pumps and algorithms. And I think I didn't really get into it in that section, but one thing that I think is cool that we're going to see more of is interoperability, which just means that different CGMs, different pumps, and different algorithms will be able to be used with each other interchangeably. So hopefully we're moving away from a world where things are very proprietary, like there's one device company that makes every piece of it and you have to pick every piece of it in order to use that system, moving towards a world where you are having freedom to choose the pump, the algorithm, and the CGM that you're using. You know, that's the vision. It's very much the vision of Tidepool and the Tidepool Loop project and the data work that they do. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, and I don't think it's going to be like perfect, but I think it will be bits and pieces where as we move towards that. A real one that actually works together as one thing. I think we're seeing like great strides forward in the loop, like the closed loop systems. I mean, I definitely like have only good things to say about Control IQ from Tandem, and I use my Dexcom with it. And I think, like I said, it's not like perfect. It doesn't solve all my problems, but it has solved some problems. Like it has really solved some issues for me. And also I think just the idea that like, I'm not making every dosage decision alone, like I'm supported by decision-making software, has been like a crazy shift in thinking for me as we look at closed loop systems that I kind of didn't anticipate, but I actually felt very emotional when I started Control IQ and I realized like this little machine was now making decisions that I had only ever made for myself before, and that it works and helps me is really cool. Cool.
Okay, I think that's about it for questions. So again, Dana, thank you very much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so I think we're going to call it quits there, but thank you again very much. And everybody go check out Beyond Type 1. Honestly, a great organization. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And you can find me. I'm happy to take questions at dana@beyondtype1.org. Like I do this for work all the time. So I'm more than happy for people to just reach out. But just, yeah, thanks for tuning in. And I hope that you learned something new and enjoy the concert. I'll see you all there.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.